Aisha held the small silver locket between her fingers, its hinge worn from years of opening and closing. Inside was a photograph, faded, creased at the edges, of her younger self and her father, both smiling as if the future had promised nothing but warmth. It was the only picture she had kept after he walked out of her life. Every other trace of him had been boxed away, then forgotten in the farthest corner of the old storeroom where she never went. But this locket remained close to her heart, not because she wanted to remember him, but because she could never fully forget. 12 years had passed since the day he left. 12 years of unanswered questions, of nights she wondered if she had been the reason, of days when she watched other fathers walking their daughters to school and felt a heavy ache in her chest. She grew up learning to silence that ache, burying it beneath achievement, responsibility, and the strength her mother taught her to wear like armor. Now, at 27, she was a teacher in a small community school. She loved her students, their innocence, their bold honesty, their belief that every broken thing could be fixed with a little glue and patience. Sometimes, she wondered if she had once been like them. Sometimes, she wished she still was. On a breezy Monday morning, Aisha arrived early to prepare her classroom. The sun painted soft gold across the wooden desks, and the trees outside rustled like whispered secrets. She unlocked her drawer to place her lesson plans inside when she noticed a sealed envelope resting on top. She froze. Her name was written on it in a handwriting she had tried for years not to recognize. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked around. The teacher's lounge was empty except for a cleaner sweeping in the far corner. She didn't open the envelope. Not yet. Her hands trembled as she slipped it into her handbag. Throughout the day, her thoughts drifted. She read stories to her class, supervised art projects, corrected spelling exercises, but her mind remained elsewhere, pulled back to the envelope she didn't dare open. When dismissal time came, she remained seated at her desk, staring out the window at the empty playground. Children had played there that morning, shouting, laughing, running freely. Now it was still, except for a single swing swaying with the wind. Something inside her moved with it, a quiet stirring she didn't want to name. Finally, she pulled out the envelope. It was thin, as if containing only a letter. She inhaled deeply and opened it. Aisha. I don't deserve the right to write to you. But I'm writing because I have something to say before life refuses to let me speak again. She stopped reading. Her throat tightened. Her father had always spoken in riddles. Even now, 12 years later, he began his apology like a puzzle she needed to solve. She forced herself to continue. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't expect it. I only hope you will hear me. I was not a good man when I left. I was angry, confused, and selfish. I thought leaving would spare you from the chaos I carried inside me. But it didn't spare you, it hurt you. And I have lived with that guilt every day since. He wrote that he had fallen ill 2 years ago. Something serious. Something that made him confront the years he had wasted running from himself. He wrote of the nights he spent thinking of her, of the memories that replayed in loops, the way she used to run into his arms after school, the drawings she made him, the stories she told him before bedtime. I know I cannot fix what I broke. But if one day you wish to see me, I'll wait. Even if you never come, I will still wait. He ended the letter with an address and nothing more. Aisha let the paper fall to her lap. She felt hollow and heavy at once, as though the words had reached into her chest and stirred the dust of old wounds she had pretended no longer existed. Why now? Why after all this time? Why dare to ask anything from her? She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply sat there, frozen, the envelope lying on her desk like a silent intruder. The next morning came too soon. She barely slept. Her mother noticed the shadows beneath her eyes at breakfast. Rough night, she asked gently. Aisha nodded, unsure how much to say. Her mother had rebuilt their life after he left. She never spoke ill of him in front of Aisha, but there had always been a quiet pain in her eyes whenever his name came up. Just tired, Aisha murmured. Her mother reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You don't have to carry more than you can handle. The words made her heart twist. If only she could put down what she had carried for so long. For 3 days, she avoided thinking about the letter. Or rather, she tried to. But every silence made space for his words. Every empty corridor reminded her of the emptiness he had left behind. By the fourth day, she found herself standing at the school gate long after a shift, staring at the road, thinking of his address scribbled on the envelope. She didn't know why she finally decided to go. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the exhaustion of running from the past. Maybe forgiveness was not something she was ready to offer, but something her heart needed in order to stop hurting. The neighborhood was old, quiet, and lined with aging apartment buildings. She climbed the stairs to the second floor, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. The hallway smelled faintly of paint and dust. She stood outside the door marked 2B and lifted her hand to knock. Her fingers hovered. Was this a mistake? Was she betraying her mother? Was she letting him back in only to be hurt again? Before she could decide, the door opened from the inside. Her father stood there. He looked smaller than she remembered. His once dark hair was streaked with white, and his face carried lines that hadn't been there 12 years ago. His eyes, though, those gentle brown eyes, were the same, filled now not with the warmth she once knew but with fear, regret, and a longing so deep it made her chest ache. "Aisha," he whispered. She didn't know how to respond. She wanted to run. She wanted to shout. She wanted to ask him every question she had buried all these years. Instead, she stood frozen, tears gathering against her will. He stepped back. "You don't have to come inside. You don't have to stay. Thank you for coming." His voice cracked on the last word. She didn't move. He didn't approach. The space between them felt like a lifetime. After a long moment, she finally stepped in. The apartment was small, sparsely furnished. Medicine bottles lined a small table. A walking cane leaned against the sofa. Everything felt heavy with silence. He offered her tea, and she nodded, more out of habit than acceptance. When he returned from the kitchen, he didn't sit too close. He kept a respectful distance, as if afraid he might break her by breathing too near. "I thought about this moment for years," he said quietly. "But I never believed it would come." She swallowed. "Why did you leave?" The words escaped before she could stop them. Soft, trembling, but honest. He closed his eyes. "Because I was a coward. Because I didn't know how to be a father anymore. I was drowning in my own failures, and instead of fighting for you, I ran." Her fists tightened around her knees. "You didn't even try." "I know." His voice broke. "And that is the regret that follows me everywhere." She looked at him, really looked at him. He was not the man she remembered. He was tired, broken, remorseful. And suddenly, she felt a strange ache, not anger, not pity, but something gentler, something that softened the edges of her pain. She stayed longer than she expected. They talked, not about the past, not yet, but about simple things. Her work. Her mother. His health. Every word felt like walking on fragile ice, but neither of them looked away. When she finally stood to leave, he didn't ask her to return. He simply said, "Thank you for giving me this moment. I'll cherish it even if it's the last." She nodded, unable to speak. She visited again a week later. Then again the next. She never told her mother at first, not because she was hiding, but because she was still trying to understand her own heart. Each visit chipped away at her anger, revealing layers of hurt she hadn't known were still there. One quiet afternoon, as she helped him arrange his books on a shelf, he suddenly said, "I don't expect you to forgive me, Aisha. But I want you to know I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry." She turned to him. His eyes glistened with sincerity. For a moment, the world paused. Forgiveness was not a door that swung open easily. It was a slow, painful process. It was not about forgetting. It was about healing. And she realized she had already begun healing the moment she stepped into his apartment. She reached for the book in his hand and placed it gently on the shelf. "I'm not ready to forgive you," she whispered. "Not yet. But, I'm not angry anymore. And I don't want to keep carrying the pain." He nodded slowly, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I will wait," he said. "Even if it takes the rest of my life." And she believed him. Over the next months, their relationship rebuilt itself, not into what it once was, but into something fragile, honest, and new. There were days she cried, days she felt distant, days she felt closer. Healing was not a straight line. But she kept walking it. One evening, she brought her mother along. She expected tension, bitterness, hurt. Instead, her mother greeted him with quiet dignity. Time had worn down her wounds too. The three of them sat together, talking about life, about memories, about the years lost and the years still left. Something in the room shifted that night, a release of the past, a softening of the heart. Months later, on a rainy afternoon, as Aisha tied the locket around her neck, she realized she had forgiven him, not with dramatic words or a grand gesture, but simply with the quiet acceptance that he was part of her story, and she no longer wished to erase him. Forgiveness had not been a gift for him. It had been a gift for herself. A heart freed from old wounds. A heart that had waited, patiently, quietly, painfully, to forgive. And finally, it did.